Okay. Now it is on. It had red light, it has to become green. So let us begin our today's discussion on this wonderful, very special biography of Sri Ramakrishna with the usual chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam Bhuvi grinanti te Bhurida janaha. This special biography of Sri Ramakrishna, in the sense that in this Swami Saradananda has, according to his own introductory preface, that it is not only the facts of physical life or various incidents that happened in his life. He has not only narrated just that, but the mental attitude, the particular mood with which Sri Ramakrishna performed all these actions, those things also have been narrated. And he gives the reason for that, very clear reason, that after all, human being is a combination of body and mind, and therefore describing only the activities of body is not going to give us sufficient knowledge about the life of that person, because same action gets done with various different motives behind. So therefore it is, he says, it is therefore important that we also think about the various attitudes, the desires, and all those things, the mental condition which prompted that physical action, both need to be taken into consideration while discussing the life of any person. And when it comes to the life of an incarnation of God, this becomes supremely important, because that life is lived at a completely different level. And so the attention to the various mental states is predominantly important there. And not only just what actions he performed, because similar actions when human beings ordinarily perform, we understand the motive behind it. For example, when we see somebody eating, then we understand that that person must be hungry and therefore is eating. So we get from looking at the physical action, we see the mental state also. If somebody is doing, yawning a lot and feeling like this, I mean, not just because my lecture is boring, but it is in addition to that, the person must be tired, didn't get good sleep, so is feeling very sleepy. You can deduce that from his actions. So for ordinary human beings, we see there is, because of similarity, we see that whatever I do in a particular situation, when I see that person, other person also doing something, it is normally one derives the conclusion that yes, that person's mindset is also similar. Through those desires or those motives, these actions are being done. So it is, sometimes they are different, like I told one nice story that in an Indian train, that one passenger asked another passenger, do you have a matchstick? Now naturally this man thought that he has to probably light a cigarette or some such thing. So he said, no, but I have a lighter, please take. And this man said, no, I don't need lighter. Hey, why? No, I needed that matchstick for toothpicking, to use it as toothpick. So the motive was different. So even in the ordinary situations, we see that the similar action may have very different motive. And when it comes to Sri Ramakrishna or an incarnation of God, the whole thing changes, because that person has no motive of his own as such. There is no purpose. The life is really the life of perfection. There is no desire as such. As Shankaracharya beautifully describes it in his introductory commentary on Bhagavad Gita, just before the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita text that he starts commenting on, before that he gives a beautiful introduction, and therein he gives this, probably the best description of how the incarnations they live their life. He describes that without any motive of their own, swaprayojan abhave api, just out of tremendous compassion for the suffering humanity, they take on the body. Jata iva, dehavan iva, lokanugraha kurvan iva. These words are very significant, beautiful words, that they assume human body. They do not get identified with body. They assume a human body. They, as if they are born, jata iva. It is not that they are born, but they take up this human as if they are born, as if they grow, as if they perform so many different human-like actions. It is, and why? Bhutanu jigrikshaya, out of compassion for this suffering humanity. It is, they see that because of the ignorance, we all are suffering here. And so, to remove the ignorance is what they are doing all these things for, to remove our ignorance. And how it does get removed is out of this, look at me. Look at me. If you look at me, you will see that if you live like this, you will have no suffering. The life of knowledge and life of ignorance. Life of ignorance is something where one identifies with the body. I can't say that I have assumed human body. What else am I? I am body. I go to New York. The body goes. I say I go to New York because of the identification, you see. But therefore, this is very different from Sri Ramakrishna, as he has assumed a human body. And this is a paramount thing in all these incarnations of God. They never identify themselves with body. That is how we see Jesus Christ. That it is, he says that my Father in heaven. He is not identified with body. Identified with body, then who are his parents? That carpenter Joseph and that Mary, they are his parents. But he is not identifying with body, and therefore he says, my Father who is in heaven. So that is how the source is shown there. And when we get the knowledge, we will also see that. And as soon as we disidentify from the limitations of body and mind, we become free. And then the incarnations of God, they show in their life how to do it, how one can do it. First, that idea that this has to be done. This is one thing, intellectually, to understand this, that I am not body, I am not mind. It doesn't really take, people are very intelligent here. So, in a few steps they can understand that I am not the body, I am not the mind. What, Ritu? Do you understand you are not body? Yeah, so understand, she is an intelligent lady. She immediately understands I am not body. But experience is not like that. I understand, but yet my actions are like an ignorant person. So now how to convert what I understand into my experience? What is the path for that? That is where most of us feel terribly distraught, confused, that okay, maybe I understand, but then what is the use of that understanding if it is not my experience? In spite of my understanding that I am not body, my experience just goes with I am this body. It is if somebody says some bad word to this body and mind about this mind-body complex, I feel hurt. I don't feel that I am not this. It is how, then what is the use of even when we understand? There is no use. Many intellectuals, they come to this position and then they decide therefore that there is no point in thinking of these things. Forget it, because these questions don't have any answers. What do you mean I am not body? Okay, maybe, but then I feel that I am body. This is my experience. And when you come to the force with which the different means of our knowledge they interact with each other, we see that the force of experience is much, much superior to the force of reason. And the experience or the factual understanding that I have got, reason can never rub it out. It is, and so I see that all my actions, all my experiences go with this understanding that I am body. And so what is the use of just thinking that I am not body? It is logical, fine. It is, but then what's the use of it? Because it can never be put into practice. But here, the incarnation of God shows how to put it into practice. It is only through the incarnations of God that we can ever learn it. Otherwise, there is no way that a human being can learn it. We need, even for minor these trainings, we need a demonstration by somebody. Like our Mihir, he wanted to repair something. A wonderful engineer, lot of knowledge he has, but he said, let me see a YouTube video about it, how they do it. So he saw a YouTube video, I saw a demo. Now I can do it. You need a demo. So these God incarnations, they show a demo that look, that how you perform the spiritual practice so that the others also see and learn. So this is, and those who give demo, they are perfect. When you do it first, you may not be able to do that perfectly, but by practice, gradually you attain the levels, higher and higher levels of perfection. So what Sri Ramakrishna said, that I have done 100%. In that colloquial style of those days, he said, I have done 16 annas, means full 1 rupee. It was divided in 16 annas. So I did 16 annas, so that you will do at least 1 anna. That's good enough for you. Even if you do 1/16th of what Sri Ramakrishna did, I would say even 1/100th, that is great, that is enough for us to see this truth. It is apparent to Sri Ramakrishna. It is very clear to Sri Ramakrishna that each is just divine. All this is appearance of this self. The consciousness is appearing in this form without any change. Like you see the pots of clay, and the potter would give them a shape. Take the clay, give them those shapes of different pots. Now it is a pot. What are you seeing? You will say, I am seeing a cup made of it. A cup. But while seeing cup, are you not seeing clay? You are seeing clay. It may be a plate that is made of the clay. Are you seeing plate? Yes, I am seeing plate. But while you are seeing plate, you are seeing clay. Where has the clay gone? Clay has not gone anywhere. You are seeing the clay, that alone is. The pots, the kettle and the cup and the plate and any such big pots or whatever, a barrel of the clay. All these they will break. But what will they go into? They will go back to clay. That clay remains. When you are seeing a pot, still you are seeing the clay. So similarly, when we are seeing various things, it is the God that is appearing in all these forms. That's it. That was the perception of Sri Ramakrishna, that That very God is appearing in all these different forms. That is the truth. And we have to change our awareness to see not just pot, but the clay. Then we can see that this is the self or God appearing in the form of Paul. That very God is appearing in the form of Naomi. And that very God is appearing in the form of Madhu. So all these different forms, you see. Just as the clay is appearing in all these different forms, so the God is appearing in all different forms without any change happening to God. And God remained the same God. There is not that the clay became something else. Clay, remaining clay, is appearing in all these different pots. No change has happened to the clay. These forms, they have no reality other than that of clay. So, that is the knowledge that we have to get. Thus, what will happen? Our identification with name and form will go away. As it goes away, we become free. We become all-pervading consciousness or self. It is, and thus there will be the end of suffering. Otherwise, whatever else you may do, there is no end to suffering. Not only no end to suffering, suffering will increase with, as Swamiji says, with geometric proportions. You may increase the happiness in arithmetic proportion, misery increases in geometric proportions. It is in today's morning reading, Swami Vivekananda was saying that for you run to get an ounce of happiness and you get a pound of suffering. So that is how it comes. It is quite psychologically, that is how it is. That pleasures, because they pass quickly, pain doesn't pass quickly. That is why it is much more. You see. It is thus. There is no way that we can get over sufferings without this knowledge. And with this knowledge, there is no possibility of suffering. In the absence of this knowledge, there is no possibility of removing suffering. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna, that divine principle, takes a human body. Because without a human person teaching, and we don't understand. Somebody asked me, and then after that I started giving that example everywhere. You see, he asked why God should appear in the human form to teach us. Said it was some school student. So I asked that in your school, who are the teachers who are applying for the teacher's post? Does a dog send an application for the post of teacher? No, only human beings are allowed to apply. No other creatures, howsoever big or small they may be, they are not allowed to apply also for those posts. It is so. The fact is that we learn from other human beings. Even the ordinary things we learn from other human beings, like arithmetic and geography and history and political science. You can't expect a tortoise to come in the class and give a lecture on the political systems. Another human being has to teach you. So, even those ordinary things we cannot learn from other creatures. What to speak of this intricate knowledge of our true nature? And that is why God has to appear in human form just to impart this wisdom to us. And we were reading, we could not have this class, Tuesday classes on last 2 Tuesdays because of Christmas and New Year. So that is why I am taking up some of the points again to get it refreshed. That Sri Ramakrishna not only could see that everybody is suffering because of the lack of this knowledge, would also see by what path that person can reach there. Because although our goal is same, our paths are very, very different from each other. And Sri Ramakrishna could see what is the path of each individual. That is how Sri Ramakrishna was staying in what is called Bhava Mukha. And this word has been kept by the translator as it is. Did not, because there is no parallel word in English language. What is this Bhava Mukha? There is explanation. But there is no particular one word that can be translated as this Bhava Mukha. Means all these different names and forms which are rising and falling. Sri Ramakrishna could see their beginning, a middle and end, all that. Just imagine, again it is an analogy, don't stretch it too much. It is just for understanding that in the ocean you see infinitely many waves rising and falling. Now wave A will not have much knowledge of wave B, but ocean will have the knowledge of all waves, and they are the part of ocean. They are me, and so each wave the ocean knows as I. So Sri Ramakrishna knows every one of us much more than we think we know. We sometimes say, oh, I know myself. And that is a false statement. It is a lie. To some extent we may know ourselves. That also, even at the physical level, we don't know much about ourselves. That is why we have to go to doctor and get examined. Even that we do not know ourselves. That it is, why do I have headache? Well, okay, go to the doctor, find out. That then the doctor examines and says, oh, this is the problem, that is why you are having headache. Okay. Otherwise we will draw a common, I have headache because I have head. So it is, more than that we cannot deduce, you see. So even for that we do not understand ourselves much. God being in and through our very reality, like the ocean is the reality of all waves. And do you see this? That as the wave rises, what is it? It is a manifestation of ocean. As it is becoming bigger, it is again manifestation of the same ocean. as it starts falling back to ocean again, and the ocean has remained as it is in the whole process. So just think of Sri Ramakrishna like that. Just try to feel this, that we are all like the waves rising and falling on the ocean called Sri Ramakrishna. And that is in Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning of this, therefore, description of Bhavamukha. Swami Saradananda, the author, quotes a verse of Bhagavad Gita from 7th chapter. Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natu aham teshu temai. That whatever appearances, whatever forms that you see coming up in this universe and again just dissolving, all these forms of whatever type, Satvika, Rajasika, Tamasika, I don't want to now go into the discussion on that, but it just indicates the tremendous variety. The tremendous variety is because of the different combination of these three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. And they create this infinite variety. All waves are ocean. They are same as ocean. But each wave is different from another wave. So each particle, each expression here is different from another. No two things are alike. That is why they are two basically. No two things are alike. And it was a very entertaining and instructive this reading in atomic science, that it is that even two electrons in the same one atom, they have their differences. Electron A and electron B. There was one scientist, Pauli, his name. Pauli, that principle is very famous. Pauli's exclusion principle. That shows that out of the four characteristics that each electron would have, at least one would be different between the two electrons, because of which they are different. You can actually, just as you can see by face that this is Vishwanath, very different from Paul, although there is so many similarities. Paul also has one nose, Vishwanath doesn't have two, it is. So we have all these similarities, and yet there are distinguishing features. Therefore, when we see them, we understand that it is this is this. So, everything is different from another thing. Infinitely, varied world. No two things are same. And yet, as the ocean, as the self, they are all same. This is a knowledge that we have to travel to experientially. Intellectually not very difficult, but experientially, well, that is where the practice comes in. It is, practice makes you perfect, It is, but then unless you practice, you don't know the truth. Like that man told the surgeon, that it is, he was getting operated, that, and he said to that, oh doctor, I am feeling very scared. This is my first surgery. And the surgeon said, don't worry, this is my first surgery also. So, it is naturally you can't expect perfection, you say, the first attempt. So, it is, another such surgeon told the patient, patient was scared. And the surgeon said, no, you will survive, no problem, your surgery, because my success rate is 10%, the earlier 9 have died, so your chances are very bright, you see. So, it is not that they don't have the understanding, they have understanding but not enough practice. So this is the practical side of religion. And unless you practice, you don't get it at all. Many say that, let me understand, I understood, but then why do I not get it? Well, you have to practice. But no, it's not possible. Well, if it is not possible, it's not possible. And it is that is what is called yoga. Yoga is what one understands has to be now put into practice. That gets called as yoga. Yoga is not just the physical, postures and all, and that is a minor aspect. Yoga means to get this knowledge properly mingled in our veins, in our neural movements, becoming our experience. And that is how it is like that. What, Tommy, do you get it? Yeah. Yeah. But the change of thought is necessary to bring about the change in behavior. It is a starting point, you see. Correct. Yeah. Like reading a book on swimming is good, but that alone does not make you Michael Phelps. It is, you have to do something more than just read a book. Exactly. Yeah. So that is what is meant here. That Sri Ramakrishna could see how the experience of A will gradually move to that goal. How the experience of B will move to that goal. They will be going by the different paths. And Sri Ramakrishna sees the paths of all of them. And as we see, last time in our last class we were discussing that Sri Ramakrishna classified these different temperaments into groups. That those who would believe in God with form, believe in the sense that was temperamentally easier for them. To accept God with form and then move on to realize what God is. Then there were some who would think of God, they found it more convenient to think of God as without form. Now the problem that both of them used to be stuck with is that especially those who, and that is why that example is taken here, especially those who considered themselves to be followers of formless God, because that gives some kind of a feeling of superiority. Those for inferior, aspirants, that forms and rituals and all, that is okay. But I belong to the intellectual class. Hardly really anybody belongs to the intellectual class. It is boasting about intellectual, I am intellectual, is really indicative of not being intellectual at all. It is the intellect is not there much in us. It is very feeble intellect. A small a blow of emotions just throws the intellect of the moorings. Gone. Like the storm comes, some trees survive. Some even 25 miles an hour winds and the trees fall down. So, our intellectual tree is just even 5 miles strong emotional storm comes, not even storm, it is breeze. That also is enough to make it lie on the ground, you see. It is so rarely anybody is intellectual, but still some people have a natural tendency towards the formless, what they call as formless. Actually, it is not formless, but not a particular form that normally people would choose. So, as Swami Vivekananda mentions, what is as soon as we think about formless, we imagine infinite sky, as it were. It is not formless, it has form. It has form that we call by mistake formless. Or we think of an expanse of ocean as if it is formless. It is not formless, it is form, a particular form which is different from normally known forms like, say, a Buddha or Jesus or Krishna or Vishnu or Mother Durga or whatever. They are of a different type, but they are forms. Now, he described that there are those unripe followers of formless aspect. Unripe means not only they do not follow this path much, they spend more energy in criticizing that, oh, this God cannot be with form. No, why do you say God is not with form? There is no reason why you should. If the God is omnipotent, God can take forms. Otherwise, you are limiting the omnipotence of God. If you say that no, God cannot be in a form, God can be in form. God can be formless. God can be with form. So do not waste. So he, as he advised, let me read that. We had read that earlier, but let us refresh that. The master had a group of devotees. This is page 436. The master had a group of devotees who followed the immature, formless aspect as a result of their Western education. The master forbade his group to act like the Christian missionaries and criticize those who think of God with form, or to hate those who worship God in the images and call them idolaters, blind believers, and so on. He said, look, God is with form and again formless. Who knows what else He is besides these? Do you know what God with form is like? It is like water and ice. When the water freezes, it becomes ice, which inside and outside is water only. Ice is nothing but water. But look, water does not have any particular form, whereas ice does. Similarly, through the cooling influence of the devotee's love for the ocean of indivisible Satchidananda freezes and makes various forms, as does ice. The master's explanation gave peace to the minds of so many people by convincing them that it is possible for both form and formless aspects of God to exist at the same time. It is very important to know that both are the aspects of God, and nothing can be called superior to the other. The formless aspect is not to be considered superior. And this is true also about although this is not mentioned, but those who are firm believers that God is with form, they also should understand that God can be with form and without form too. They should not limit God. That it is that God which is with form is also without form. So, therefore, both these are unripe or immature forms of worship of God, with form or without form. With form because the person doesn't go bragging much. Swami Saradananda has not included that here, but those who consider themselves to be worshippers of formless, they have a superior air about themselves that puffs up their ego more, and therefore that is mentioned here more categorically. Now, I can tell you because this fellow was victim of that. Not only this fellow, go to Swami Vivekananda was victim of that. That he would forbid others, hey, no, God, you should not worship God with form. Don't go to the temple. He and Rakhal, who later became Swami Brahmananda, both were members of what is called Brahma Samaj, where you had to take a vow that I don't accept God with form, and so I will not salute any image of God. And then when both of them came to Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Narendra still kept on holding on to his view that God can be only formless. And although Sri Ramakrishna is a great person, this is his superstition, going and to the Kali temple and this other temples and prostrating before that. This is just superstition. And then he saw this Rakhal, he got convinced, his mind was different. So he got convinced that, well, this is a right path. So he followed Sri Ramakrishna into Kali temple and worshipped there. And when he came back, Narendranath was there and he scolded him left and right with such scathing remarks that, don't you know, you remember what you did, you took a vow there in Brahma Samaj, and now what are you doing? Are you not ashamed? And so many things, that made Rakhal become very morose. Sri Ramakrishna therefore told Narendra that don't criticize him. You do whatever you want. But his mind has changed now. So let him do now according to his changed mind what he understands good. Much later, Swami Vivekananda in his lecture says, look, because of my such obstinacy about God is only formless, I have to learn every single thing about religion from a man whose religious life was all worshipping God with form. That is how, you see, one comes to this learning gradually. So Sri Ramakrishna would take everybody, but one thing he always told, that do not criticize other paths. Every path, so many people are moving, everybody has a different path. So you follow your path, do not waste energies in saying that the other people, they are wrong. No, they are also right. Who are you to say that they are wrong? This is a very important thing. We will just read this para and stop for the day. We cannot but help relating another story here. Swami Vivekananda was the foremost among the followers of the immature, formless aspect of God. The Master placed him not only as the foremost of that group, but also of all classes of devotees. Under the influence of Western education and of the Brahmo Samaj, Vivekananda would sometimes make caustic remarks about the followers of God with form, especially during an argument. Sometimes the master would set up a lively debate between him and some devotees of God with form and then enjoy the fun. And Sri Ramakrishna was a fun lover, So, on these occasions, almost no one could withstand Vivekananda's fluent argumentation. His keen intellect and sharp reasoning left his opponents speechless, and some of them also felt hurt when this happened. Sometimes the master would joyfully mention to others, "The other day Narendra cut the arguments of so and so into pieces. What an outstanding intellect!" But one day, Swamiji was silenced while arguing with Girish, a follower of God with form. On that occasion, we felt that Master took Girish's side in order to strengthen and nourish his faith. On another day, while talking with the Master, Swami Vivekananda referred to the belief of the devotees of God with form as blind faith. Master replied, "Well, can you explain what do you mean by blind faith? Faith is always blind. Has faith eyes? Either simply say faith or knowledge. What do you mean by classifying faith into one having eyes and another being blind?" Swami Vivekananda said later, "In fact, I was embarrassed when explaining the meaning of blind faith to the Master that day. I could not find any meaning in that expression. After understanding that the Master's words were true, I never again used that phrase." So that is how, you see, Narendra, even in spite of all this intellect, was dumbfounded when the reasoning is done with a superior intellect. This is a big difference. A superior intellect can silence an inferior intellect, cannot convince it. Conviction is a different thing. Silencing, yes, a superior intellect can present arguments which can silence the other person, but that would not convince other person. Shankaracharya mentions this, that in his commentary, beautiful commentary on a Vedanta aphorism, where that aphorism says that therefore reasoning or logic is having no basis. Logic does not have any basis. And commenting on that, therefore, Shankaracharya says that anything you prove by the force of logic can be overturned by superior logic. And that again can be overturned by still superior logic. I would suggest, those who are interested and like to, read about logic, a beautiful book, Proofs and Refutations. It is a book of mathematical logic, but very interesting style of writing, that how you see everything can be proved and also can be disproved. It is Proofs and Refutations, a very nice book. I am forgetting the name of author. You can find that on Google. So it is Anyway, so this discussion we shall continue later, and next Tuesday, instead of this class, there will be a video on this personality of Sri Ramakrishna. The video talk is by Swami Sarvapriyananda. And I was listening to that this morning, a wonderful talk. So we shall put that here next Tuesday. So we will meditate for 30 seconds, and then if anybody has a question, welcome. Yes, any question? Yes, Tommy?
Would a good analogy of knowledge and faith be like an astronaut and an astronomer? They're both scientists, but one is more intellectual, one is more skill-based, but they both provide value to the scientific community. So they're both, neither one is better than the other because they both contribute both.
Well, that you can, yes, that can be a good analogy, yeah. That both are intellectuals of different type. One is more that practice skills, and other is only practicing the intellectual skills, One knows only how to flex the cerebral muscles. The other knows how to use some other muscles as well. And that is the difference, yeah. Yes.
I have two things. How can you tell the difference between God assuming a human body and someone being born and becoming enlightened and becoming very influential?
Yeah, the two things are very different. It is somebody, God assuming a human body means there was no ignorance at all, actually.
How can you tell?
Well, you cannot tell, but it is therefore by their birth, by their upbringing, what happened in the beginning, even in the childhood of their life, that tells you that this person was never in ignorance. That person never was in ignorance right from childhood.
Can you give an example of how you would know this in Sri Ramakrishna's life?
Of course, yeah, there are so many examples in Sri Ramakrishna's life of his samadhi, even when he was a child. Even when he was a child, very similar to the story of Jesus, that solving the philosophical problems of some scholars, Sri Ramakrishna did exactly the same thing in his childhood. So, and the tremendous other qualities that he displayed in childhood, that is possible only when you have that kind of knowledge right from the childhood, when he had not performed any spiritual practice. Other person sees, oh, what kind of life I am living. No, not right. I have to practice the discipline and know the truth. So, changes the path, changes the lifestyle, and thus gradually practicing reaches the destination. Becoming a great man and means what? Gives lectures and like that. That doesn't make anybody really great. It is, therefore, the two categories are very different. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna tells another category which is not God incarnation but Nitya Siddha. They were also never in ignorance. They were always having the knowledge, but they were not born just to that like God assuming human form, but their life had something left to be finished, and so they had to take a human birth. So
And the other thing is, if you don't criticize other paths, if you call a path unright, isn't that criticizing it?
no. It is that's a good question. It is the way the criticism is done. If it is done with a positive mindset that to show that there are imperfections associated with it, so that one can remove those imperfections. That is the meaning of it. That it is unripe means it will gradually ripen, you see. Yeah, so it is not it's criticizing in that sense.
Because mainstream Judaism and Islam say you shall have no other gods before me. Are they going to change, do you think?
Well, it is because of their understanding of the scriptures, their own scriptures is of that type, and which is common with all different religions. It is that you read the scripture in with our own ignorant and fanatic mind. See, everybody has this tendency to show that I am superior to others. A common human tendency, I am better than others. But if I say just like that, I am better than others, then it doesn't look that good. So, being intelligent person, what I do is, no, my religion is superior to your religion. So, I keep the gun on the shoulder of the religion and start firing at others. There is no love lost for the religion there. It is that desire to show that I am superior to you. So it is my religion that Chetanananda has given in his new book, that God with open eyes, a very short but nice argument in this respect, that he was being told by one of his friends that your Hinduism, is a very weak religion, because God has to take incarnation again and again and again. Look at Christianity, just one. So it is a strong religion. So Chetanananda writes, I replied, you see, God is afraid of being born and again in Christianity because he will be murdered, you see. So therefore, he doesn't want to become a Christian again. So this is in jest, but the desire to show that I am better than you gives rise to these ideas. And that is where Sri Ramakrishna is the greatest in that example in this, that because he doesn't have an axe to grind, he doesn't have an ego, he doesn't need to show I am superior to somebody. It is so there was no conflict then that he could see in all these great teachers. And they all were teaching the same truth, he could see. But because of my ego and association with that, okay, I was born in this religion and I have to show that it is superior to other religions. So I start criticizing them, show pitfalls there. At the same time, as Jesus says in Sermon on the Mount, that while you are looking at a flake in the eye of others, you are not seeing the big mote in your own eye. So it is like that it happens.
It's ironic, because if you say he's the greatest, that means he's superior.
Well, that is therefore there is one has to understand it properly. Greatest in what sense? Okay, so we shall conclude here and with our regular prayers. Huh. Imre Lakatos. Thank you. That Proofs and Repetitions by Imre Lakatos. Yeah, he was a logician and mathematician. That book was published by, I think, Cambridge University Press, and a wonderful book. If you like, please read it. You know, those who think that logic can prove, they will see that logic doesn't prove.
You have to be a specialist to understand it.
No, 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 no. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.